Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Crawford. Today we're going to be talking about a quick review that we did on Friday, October 20th, where we talked about how do you name angles and how do you mark them in the picture. We noticed that some people were pretty good about this, but the majority of students forgot how to name properly, how to name it in the picture. So we did want to review that briefly, and there is a half-sheet assignment that goes with this, so make sure you look through this and then understand what you need to do for that. So first of all, how do we name angles? Remember, whichever letter is at the vertex of the angle, so here's my angle, it's marked with the red arch. A is at the center, so whatever I name it, A has to be at the center of that name. So I could go B, A, C. So angles usually use 3 letters. So that would be one way to name the angle. BAC literally just traces it like that. I could go backwards and say angle CAB. That's another option. Again, noticing the A is in the center for both names. Or I could just name it the one letter. Since there's nothing else around that letter, I could also call it angle A. So those are the 3 ways that I can name that red highlighted angle. So this one now, we're actually writing a congruent statement. So that means somehow I need to say that 2 things are congruent to each other. And we're specifically looking at the red angles here. So I'll put that down just so we can see the whole thing. Actually, let's see if we can get it a little bit farther out. Woo, that zoomed out a lot. Let's try, say, fiddle with this for a little bit. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, so I'm going to move this congruent sign down here. All right, so we're marking the 2 red angles. So again, how do I name this angle? We usually want to use 3 letters. Don't use the 1-letter name because it's really not very specific and it could get mixed up very easily. So let's call this angle BAC. That was one of our options. So BAC. Notice I've got the symbol in front for angle, and I want to match it up with the red angle here. Again, I don't want to say just angle S, but I know S has to be in the middle because that's the vertex. If I'm following the same order as here, we're starting with the double green, going to the red, going to the blank, so same thing here. We're going to go R, S, Q. And that's how we'll name that angle, and that's how we said that they're congruent to each other. Congruent side in the middle, angle, angle, boom, done. All right, so now how do we actually show it in the picture? So we're doing the opposite now. So this is where we start drawing in those little arches that were drawn in the previous examples. Angle ZTW, what letter's in the middle of that? T is, which means it's going to be at point T. So if I trace ZTW, it's really the angle that's at T, which is right here. So I'm going to put a little arch there. And I want to show that it's congruent to BQH. So again, let's trace BQH. Q is at the center of that name. So here is where my angle is going to be. So that's how I mark that these 2 are equal. They each have 1 arch, showing that they're congruent. Now, how do I do it with sides? Sides, I use tick marks. So if I look at ZW, I know it's a side because there's only 2 letters and it's got the bar above it. So ZW is here. I'm going to put 1 tick mark there. BH is right here. And I'm going to put 1 tick mark there. Now I've shown that they're congruent. If I was going to set up a second set of sides, like if I was going to say that TW is also congruent to QH, then I would do double tick marks like that. And then you just kind of keep doubling or tripling from there. So we're going to see that in the final example, which we have here. So this one we have to name every single piece, which means all the angles have to get marked and all the sides. So I like to start off down here by marking out what goes with what. So A in the first group matches with A in the second group, so A should be A. C is the second letter, and C is the second letter, so they equal each other. And then D and B are the last letters. So here's how I know what letters should go with what. So let's start with marking up all the angles in red. We'll do red angles first. So angle A should go with angle A. Well, if I'm looking in just the left-hand side triangle, A is just this little tiny angle right here. And it should match up with A in the second triangle. So ACB, if I look at that, the A spot is this angle right here. So those are now marked as equal. I also want to do double and triple marks for all the others. So the ones that are at point C are also congruent. So double arch, and then obviously that leaves triples for those guys. Those are arches. I just kind of drew them really poorly. I also need to check my sides. So in the left-hand side, we have AD. So we'll start by putting a tick mark there. Now check your chart. AD matches with AB, which means AD here should match with AB over here. So one tick mark each. Check over here, CD. CD matches with CB, so double tick marks for those ones. The last side is AC, which is reflexive. It's the same overlapping piece. I don't need to mark it because it's overlapping in the picture, so I just leave it as is. There's not really, you don't add a triple mark there or anything, you just leave it alone. Okay, so that's a quick refresher on how you name angles, how you mark them, and how you use statements like this to mark everything. So you have a little half sheet pink piece of paper that you got on Friday that is part of the assignments for the unit. So make sure you get that done and checked off by one of us. The front side is a lot of like what these examples were. The back side you have to fill in the blank for what reason you should give for certain statements in the proofs.